So today I looked at two different articles. One was Preparing Art Teachers to Teach in a New Digital Landscape by Roland. He wrote that in 2010. The other is Technology and Education by Anita, Cloete. That was written in 2015. And so not necessarily the most current explanations of what technology is like now, but very relevant in how they address a changing landscape and a transformed world as a result of these new technologies that have just kind of consistently been introduced and been changing the world for the better half of the century, I guess. One of the things that Cloete talked about that I found especially interesting was this concept of technology as a medium as opposed to a tool. That was something that I noticed Roland used in his paper, talking about how technology is a tool not for information but for connectivity. But Cloete takes that a step further and says, actually, it's a media. And that got me thinking, what's the difference between a medium and a tool? And so I have here one of my paintbrushes, and I have my watercolors. Now, watercolors we would call media. Like what was the medium of that painting? Well, it was watercolor. The paintbrush, however, we wouldn't call the medium. We would call that a tool that we use in creating the work. And so what's the difference? The difference is that media is communicating meaning and creating meaning. As Cloete puts it, it's this concept of a world-changing item versus something that we use to do what we've always done. And so somebody figures out, hey, I can hit a rock and break a shell all the easier. That is a tool. But all of a sudden, once somebody's like, and now I'm going to take this rock and use it to make lines in the sand in some prehistoric context, I don't know, you've got a medium. There's new meaning that is being communicated. And this new culture that's emerging as a result, where we have to think now, how do we interact, what do we value with technology? One of the things that stood out with both articles, almost the common ground, at least for me reading them, was this idea of cultural interconnectedness, which on its own can mean a lot of different things. Today in the 2020s, we've got a lot of talk of cultural issues within the classroom in the United States. That's not necessarily new, but it's usually framed in the context of America's multicultural identity. That's very different than how Roland talked about it in 2008 and Cloete, writing from South Africa, viewed it, where it was this idea of connecting different cultures around the globe, something that technology can now do. And so that got me excited, thinking about all the different ways that we can engage the world, engage other countries, not just thinking about, hey, what do all these different American kids have that makes us different, but rather, what do we have that makes us the same when we start interacting with someone in South Africa or someone in Japan or wherever it might be. We have this ability to learn about humanity not just from our cultural standpoint, even if that's a multicultural cultural standpoint, and instead we can look at the world as something even more diverse than we previously would have realized.